Am I the idiot for not allowing my oldest daughter to use my home as her wedding venue because of my ex-wife? I'm in a pretty bad situation right now. When my stepdaughter got married 2 years ago, she used our home as the wedding venue. We have a meadow in our backyard that is able to accommodate a large number of people, as well as an empty clean barn that can be set up for dinner tables. My daughter was supposed to marry at another location last year, but because of the pandemic, the venue shut down permanently. She's now asked to use my home for the wedding, but I told her my issues with that. I had a restraining order against her mother, my ex, and a few members of her family after threats and harassment were directed towards my wife and myself. The restraining order expired mid-last year, but we haven't heard from them since, but I stayed firm in my decision. This has upset my daughter greatly and she's screamed at me, which she's never done. I offered to give her $15,000 for an alternative venue, but now she's adamant about it being our home. I feel extremely uncomfortable giving my ex and her family access to my home because that's where the washrooms will be. My daughter has put this issue on Facebook and I now have all of my extended family against me. This has also stirred up my ex and her family against me. And worse is that my wife and stepdaughter are now being accused of trying to ruin my daughter's wedding when they haven't played any part in it. I'm planning on giving in and letting my daughter use our home for the wedding later this year, but I'm going to tell my wife and stepdaughter not to be around for it, which I'm sure is going to create a bunch of other issues. Am I the idiot? Update to my post. I messaged my daughter about the outdoor trailer bathrooms and she refused and said it was a disgusting idea. She then accused me of treating her worse than my stepdaughter and that I play favorites and that I'm a terrible father. She did not want the wedding at our home anymore and hung up. She is no longer picking up my calls. I got an angry call from my mother who says she is hosting her wedding instead, and that I will not be welcomed at the wedding. My father will be walking my daughter down the aisle instead of me. Thanks everyone for the advice. I appreciate it, but I feel like I've made the biggest mistake of my life. I'm completely heartbroken. Comments before the update. Not the idiot. Go renew the restraining order if your ex and her family are harassing you, and explain to your daughter that she can either have the wedding at your home without her mother and her side of the family, or she can accept the $15K and have it elsewhere. But for personal safety reasons, you will not let her mother into your home. Otherwise, rent porta potties. They have some super fancy ones for wedding venues. Trailers don't look or smell like porta potties with a washroom. Not the idiot. But how is it that you raised your, presumably, adult daughter in such a way that when you don't give her what she wants, she screams at you and goes after you on Facebook? And why do you now think the right thing to do is to give in to her antics by letting her do the wedding at your house after all? Update. I've had many messages asking me for an update that I've only noticed after logging back into this account. I have a fairly positive update. My daughter's wedding took place in October last year. After a few months of my daughter refusing to talk to me, my wife saw how I was being affected by the situation and said I should just let my daughter use our home without any restrictions. That we should lock up our valuables and hope for the best. I was extremely hesitant, but at my wife's insistence, I arranged a meeting at my mother's home and made the offer. I was immediately told that it was too late and that the new invitations were already sent out and the wedding would be happening at my mother's property. But my daughter asked for the $15,000 I originally offered for an alternative venue to be used to renovate my mother's home a little for the wedding. I just accepted that this was the best it was going to get and gave her the money. My daughter still didn't warm up to me after this and would only reply to texts occasionally. Then a month before the wedding, I was told to come to the wedding without my wife. My daughter said that similar to how my wife and I felt, her mother and some members of her maternal family felt uncomfortable being around us due to the expired restraining order. She said she was willing to fight them to have her father at the wedding. But my wife, stepdaughter, and her husband were not invited. I was incredibly disappointed. I wanted to confront my daughter and potentially not go to the wedding at all if my wife wasn't invited. But my wife said that there's too much bad blood and I should just attend the wedding quietly for my daughter's sake. I ended up attending the wedding alone and left once dinner was done. While I got to see my daughter get married, my heart feels heavy that it was such a conflict-filled situation. Even having me walking her down the aisle became such a touchy subject that she just ended up having her half-brother walk her down the aisle instead. When I went to congratulate my daughter before I left, she angrily told me that she should have just eloped because of me and my ex, and that it's disgusting that her own parents ruined every aspect of her wedding, that she can't wait to build a life separate from everyone. I apologized and cried on my way home. A part of me is happy that my daughter is still somewhat talking to me, but I do regret putting her under so much stress. It's not her fault her parents can't get along. I'm just hopeful that we can slowly start repairing our relationship. Not the idiot. I'm very confused about why your own parents and sister are on your daughter's, her mom's side in this situation. Is there information being left out? Regardless, I am sorry to hear about what you're going through. I hope things work out for the better with you and your daughter. Not the idiot. What part of this update was positive? Your daughter threw a fit because you didn't want to invite people who harassed you and your family into your home, but she's perfectly fine taking your money, uninviting your wife and her family who've done nothing to her, and not letting you walk her down the aisle because her mother has a problem with it. Exactly what concessions did your ex make for the sake of her daughter's wedding? Doesn't sound like she fought for you to be there at all. Should Opus have even gone to the wedding? Let me know in the comments. Am I the idiot for not reconsidering my sister-in-law for guardianship of our kids after she initially said no? My wife, female 30, and I, male 30, have 2 kids under the age of 4. We haven't come to a decision on who would be the kids' guardians if something were to happen to us. There are 5 realistic parties: my sister and husband, My sister-in-law, single. My second sister, single. Brother-in-law and GF, long-term relationship 5 years plus. My father-in-law and mother-in-law. Some are closer to our kids than others. Mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law are the closest because they live so close. So we decided to ask each of our siblings if they would want guardianship over the kids. Only my sister-in-law said no because she is younger, upper 20s, and she said wasn't sure about kids yet. No hard feelings there. Sister-in-law is great with the kids in the aunt role and honestly are the kids' favorite person right now. This weekend sister-in-law was visiting and the guardianship topic was being discussed. I was pushing for my sister and husband to be the first choice because they are just great people overall and other reasons I won't get into. The condition for anyone we choose as the guardian has to move to our house or stay in town near our FIL. My sister, husband have lived overseas for years and I didn't want the kids to be uprooted. My sister-in-law pointed out they likely wouldn't be willing to do this because they would need new jobs and the costs of moving would be too much. Side note, we live below our means and are big on saving for early retirement. I quickly stated the guardians wouldn't have to worry about money and I would have them covered. Sister-in-law asked what I meant. At this point I started to discuss the financial aspect. Between our financials and life insurance policies, whoever took the kids wouldn't have to worry about any expenses. On top of the insurance, I'm planning on setting up our will to cover all expenses for the guardians and the kids. I would leave the kids funds for college and extra for wedding, home or whatever else they choose. For the guardians, I would basically give them our retirement plan with certain conditions. In the end, hopefully anything left would be passed on to our kids. At this point, my sister-in-law said she wanted to be considered for guardianship again. In her words, if I could be a stay-at-home mom, I would take the kids 100%. On the spot I said you already made your decision and it was no. My wife backed up sister-in-law but I stood firm that sister-in-law already said no. To me she clearly changed her mind C of the money. Her original decision was no C she wasn't sure about kids yet. Not that she couldn't afford kids. Things went back and forth and it ended a little sour. Outside of this I've never had an issue with sister-in-law and we actually get along really well. I'm debating if I should reconsider or stick by my gut. So am I the idiot that I'm not reconsidering my sister-in-law to be a potential guardian for my kids? Edit. Changed sister-in-law saying she wanted to be child-free to being undecided at the time. Showed my wife the post. She is saying the sister-in-law never said she wanted to be child-free but was undecided on children because of the costs. We have talked to her about how expensive the kids have been and that is the reason we aren't having any more. All siblings agreed they would move to our town when we first asked around. Not sure if this matters but if I had a choice before talking to everyone it would be 1. Sister plus husband. 2. Sister-in-law, single. 3. Brother-in-law plus husband. 4. Sister, single. 5. FIL. Comments before the update. You're the idiot. The only factors that should play into this are the best interests of your children. Frankly, the fact that sister-in-law said no when she was anticipating having to be the sole breadwinner for your children and being a single parent demonstrates that she took your request quite seriously. Reconsidering after she finds out that financial support is available is reasonable. And your implications about gold digging are rude and uncalled for. No idiots here. But consider that your sister-in-law only wanted to be child-free because the financial burden of children is daunting and she worried she wouldn't be able to provide the financial stability that kids deserve. Imagine suddenly being the parent to 2 children without any ability to plan financially. That's terrifying. I think you should at least consider your sister-in-law, given that you hadn't given her the details when you asked the first time. That's a huge piece of information to leave out. Update. Thought I would give an update on this situation since there have been a few revelations. There was some fallout with my sister-in-law which I'll get to. After further discussion with my wife we decided her parents would make the best guardians if we were to pass. For some reason if they were unable to take the kids my sister and husband would take over guardianship. We spoke with all of them together and everyone was on board. I explained the financial part to both FIL, sister husbands and there were no issues or concerns. Our family financial advisor worked with our lawyer to set up the financial side. In short, living expenses are paid for, guardians get paid nicely, and the rest gets split between the kids. We noted sister-in-law would be included for family expenses of special occasions and trips, vacations which we thought was fair since she is a part of the kids' lives already. Now for the fallout with sister-in-law. We spoke with sister-in-law separately and explained why we chose the other family members as guardians. It was really about the 2-parent household dynamic. The whole thing about her saying no before learning about the money is an afterthought. She wasn't happy with our choice and started explaining why her being a single parent shouldn't be considered. I just explained with all else being equal we would want a 2-parent household over single parents. I did say if she were to get into a committed long-term relationship we would be open to reconsidering. Sister-in-law was upset but not much else was said. Since the conversation with sister-in-law things have been strained unfortunately. With our finances being partially revealed the relationship with sister-in-law really changed. When she hangs out she has talked inappropriately to our kids in my opinion. Stuff like wouldn't it be great if she was a permanent babysitter or wouldn't have her around for family vacations all the time. Also talks bad about my sister and husband to the kids. Whenever we get together with our in-laws sister-in-law expects us to pay for everyone's meals each time and if we don't pay there is always a comment from sister-in-law. Before we would switch off between FIL, MIL and us, sister-in-law never paid for meals. The straw was my old sister-in-law's dog that needed something like a $5,000 surgery. She came straight to us to pay and I said we would not pay for the surgery. She told us we were heartless to not pay for it. I explained to my wife that it was a hard no and my sister-in-law guilt-tripped my wife. I still refused. Overall I hate the way my sister-in-law is acting now. We won't be seeing her for a few weeks, so that's nice. Next time she does come by, I'll be speaking with her about how she treats us and the kids now. Basically, she either can stop acting this way around the kids and stop guilting my wife into paying for everything, or we start cutting her out of our family lives. So that's about where it stands now. Not great. If I had to do it over again, I would have just chosen the guardians without speaking with everyone and let them find out about the financial part after our deaths. Not the idiot. While she has really shown her true colors, it's all about the money. What is really sad is she assumes your kids would be a burden and is only really interested if she is handsomely compensated. You cannot trust her to be an adult around the kids, and she feels entitled to your money. She has dug her own grave over this. She will reap what she is sowing. Not the idiot. My parents had it set up that we would only go to two parents' households. My great uncles and great aunts agreed to be our guardians in case of our parents' death. However, it was clear both sets of uncle and aunt had to be alive, cause if one couple lost their spouse by the time our parents died, we would go to the other uncle and aunt couple because it was important to my parents for us kids to have a two-parents household. I think your wife and you did the best with what you wanted for your children, even to the point where they would have shelter, education, and potential weddings provided for, in keeping guardians from struggling financially and raising the children. That is amazing. But what I love is the fact you have many choices in guardians. Families are amazing when everyone is getting along. Which brings me to your sister-in-law. From your updated post, it sounds like she's in for the finance more than the kids. Even though she loves them, the fact that she expects you to pay for her dog's surgery on top of dinner paid for, then bad-mouthing to the kids about you. Nope. If she was my sister-in-law, she wouldn't be a candidate for guardianship. Her fault for losing out.